Why your memory feels foggy after 60, and the real fixes that help. Good evening. If you've walked into a room and forgotten why you're there, if you've blanked on a familiar name mid-conversation, or if your thoughts sometimes feel like they're moving through fog instead of clear air, I want you to know two things right away. First, you are far from alone. Second, what you're experiencing is, in most cases, not a sign that something is seriously wrong. It's a real, well-studied phenomenon, and there are genuine, evidence-based things you can do about it. Tonight, I want to talk honestly about why memory often feels foggier after 60, what's actually happening in the brain and body to cause it, and what the real research says about improving it. I'm not going to promise you a miracle food or a secret your doctor is hiding from you. What I am going to share is grounded in actual studies, explained as clearly as I can, because I think people deserve honest information, not exaggerated claims dressed up to sound dramatic. Before we start, a quick note. I'm not a doctor, and this video isn't medical advice. Memory changes can sometimes be a sign of something that needs medical attention, including, but not limited to, thyroid issues, vitamin deficiencies, sleep disorders, medication side effects, or in some cases, more serious conditions. If your memory changes are sudden, severe, or rapidly worsening, or if you're noticing significant changes in your ability to function day to day, please talk to your doctor. What I'm covering tonight applies to the common, gradual brain fog that many people notice with normal aging, not a replacement for proper medical evaluation. Let me know in the comments, have you noticed changes in your memory or focus over the past few years? And if so, what does it tend to look like for you? Forgetting names, losing your train of thought, or something else? I read every comment, and it genuinely shapes what I cover going forward. Tonight, we're going to walk through this in two parts. First, I want to explain what's actually happening in the aging brain that causes this foggy feeling, because understanding the why makes the what to do about it make a lot more sense. Then, we'll count down through the habits with the strongest research behind them for supporting clearer thinking as we age. Part 1. What's actually happening? Let's start with something important to understand. The brain does change with age, and some of that change is completely normal, not a disease process. Processing speed, how quickly your brain takes in and responds to new information, naturally slows somewhat with age. This is one of the most consistent findings in cognitive aging research. It doesn't mean you're becoming less intelligent or less capable. It often means your brain is simply taking a bit more time to retrieve information, especially when there are distractions or multiple things competing for attention at once. There's also a well-documented experience researchers sometimes call the tip of the tongue phenomenon, that frustrating moment where you know exactly what you want to say, you can almost feel the word, but it won't quite surface. This becomes more common with age and is generally considered a normal part of how word retrieval works in an aging brain, rather than an early sign of significant cognitive decline. Beyond these normal age-related shifts, several specific factors tend to contribute to the foggy feeling many people notice, and the encouraging part is that several of them are modifiable. Sleep quality is one of the biggest contributors. As we age, sleep architecture changes. We tend to spend less time in deep, slow-wave sleep, which is the stage most closely associated with memory consolidation, the process by which short-term memories get filed away into longer-term storage. Poor or fragmented sleep doesn't just make you tired, it directly interferes with this overnight filing process, which can make information feel harder to recall the next day, even if you technically learned it just fine. Blood flow to the brain matters enormously as well. The brain requires a constant, steady supply of oxygen and glucose to function efficiently, and anything that affects circulation, including high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or reduced physical activity, can subtly affect how efficiently the brain operates. Research has consistently linked cardiovascular health to cognitive health, to the point where many researchers now describe heart health and brain health as deeply intertwined rather than separate systems. Chronic stress and elevated cortisol also play a meaningful role. The hippocampus, a brain region central to memory formation, is particularly sensitive to prolonged cortisol exposure. Research has found that chronically elevated stress hormones can interfere with the hippocampus's ability to form and retrieve memories effectively, which may help explain why memory often feels noticeably worse during stressful or anxious periods of life. Dehydration is a surprisingly underrated factor. Even mild dehydration, a level many people don't notice as thirst, has been associated in research with reduced concentration, slower processing speed, and a general sense of mental fog. As mentioned in earlier discussions of aging, our sense of thirst becomes less reliable with age, meaning many older adults are mildly dehydrated more often than they realize. And finally, reduced physical activity plays a larger role than most people expect. Exercise doesn't just benefit the heart and muscles, it has direct, measurable effects on the brain, including increased blood flow, reduced inflammation, and even the promotion of new connections between brain cells. Of everything researchers have studied in relation to cognitive aging, physical activity consistently shows up as one of the strongest, most reliable factors associated with better cognitive function later in life. Understanding these underlying contributors matters because it reframes the conversation. Brain fog after 60 usually isn't one mysterious problem with one mysterious cause. It's often the combined result of several modifiable factors working together. How well you're sleeping, how active you are, how hydrated you are, how stressed you are, and how healthy your cardiovascular system is. The good news in that is significant. Modifiable factors mean there are real things you can do. Part 2. The habits with the strongest evidence. Now let's count down through the habits that have the most consistent research behind them for supporting clearer, sharper thinking as we age. We're going from 5 to 1, ending with the one I believe matters most of all. Number 5. Stay properly hydrated throughout the day. We touched on this already, but it's worth treating as its own actionable habit because it's so simple and so often overlooked. Studies examining hydration and cognitive performance have found that even mild dehydration, as little as 1 to 2% of body weight in fluid loss, can measurably affect concentration, short-term memory, and mood. A practical target for most older adults is somewhere around 6 to 8 glasses of fluid spread throughout the day, adjusted based on activity level, climate, and any specific guidance from your doctor, particularly if you're managing a condition like heart failure or kidney disease, where fluid intake needs to be more carefully monitored. The simplest habit to build here is keeping a glass or bottle of water within reach throughout the day, rather than relying on feeling thirsty as your cue, since that signal becomes less reliable with age. Number 4. Manage stress with intentional practices. Given what we discussed about cortisol and the hippocampus, actively managing stress isn't just good for your mood, it's directly relevant to memory function. This doesn't require anything elaborate. Research has found benefit in relatively simple, consistent practices. A daily 10-minute period of quiet breathing or meditation, time spent in nature, or maintaining regular social connection, which itself has been shown in multiple studies to buffer against stress and support cognitive health. Social connection in particular deserves special mention. Numerous longitudinal studies have found that older adults with stronger social ties tend to show slower rates of cognitive decline compared to those who are more socially isolated. The relationship appears to run in both directions. Social interaction provides genuine cognitive stimulation. Conversation requires real-time memory and processing, and the emotional support from relationships appears to buffer against the chronic stress that can quietly erode memory function over time. A regular phone call with a family member, a weekly coffee with a friend, or participation in a community group isn't just pleasant, it's a legitimate, evidence-supported habit for brain health. Number 3. Prioritize cardiovascular health. Because blood flow to the brain is so closely tied to cognitive function, habits that support heart health tend to support brain health as a natural byproduct. This includes the basics most people have heard before, but that bear repeating because the evidence is genuinely strong. Managing blood pressure, keeping cholesterol within a healthy range, avoiding smoking, and limiting excessive alcohol intake. Beyond the basics, research has specifically highlighted aerobic exercise, activities that raise your heart rate, like brisk walking, swimming, or cycling, as particularly beneficial for cognitive health. Multiple studies have found that older adults who engage in regular aerobic activity show better performance on memory and processing speed tests compared to sedentary peers. And some research has even found modest increases in the size of the hippocampus itself among older adults who began a regular walking program, suggesting the brain retains a meaningful capacity to adapt and strengthen even later in life. A reasonable target, supported by general health guidelines, is around 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity per week, roughly 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Though any amount of regular movement tends to be better than none, and you should work with your doctor to determine what's appropriate for your specific health situation, especially if you have any cardiovascular or joint concerns. Number 2, build genuine sleep quality, not just sleep quantity. We touched on sleep's role in memory consolidation earlier, and it's worth emphasizing as an actionable habit because so many people focus only on hours slept, when sleep quality matters just as much, if not more. Consistent sleep hygiene practices have real research behind them. A regular bedtime and wake time, limiting screens in the hour before bed, keeping the bedroom cool and dark, and avoiding caffeine in the afternoon and evening, since caffeine has a longer half-life than many people realize and can still be affecting sleep quality hours after consumption. If you consistently struggle with sleep despite good habits, difficulty falling asleep, frequent waking, snoring, or excessive daytime sleepiness, it's worth raising with your doctor specifically, since conditions like sleep apnea become more common with age and can significantly affect both sleep quality and cognitive function, but are very treatable once identified. Don't assume poor sleep is simply something to tolerate. It's one of the most addressable contributors to brain fog that we have real tools for. And now, number 1, the factor I believe matters most of all: regular physical exercise. If I had to point to a single habit with the strongest, most consistent body of research behind it for supporting cognitive health as we age, it would be this one. Physical activity affects the brain through multiple pathways simultaneously. It improves cardiovascular health and blood flow, as we discussed. It reduces chronic inflammation, which has been increasingly linked to cognitive decline. And it promotes the release of compounds in the brain associated with the growth and maintenance of neural connections. What's particularly compelling is research specifically looking at the hippocampus, the memory center of the brain that we mentioned earlier. A well-known study tracking older adults over the course of a year found that those who participated in a regular walking program showed an increase in hippocampal volume, while those in a stretching-only control group showed the more typical age-related decline in that same brain region. This kind of finding is significant because it demonstrates the brain isn't simply destined to shrink and decline with age in a fixed, unchangeable way. Meaningful structural changes appear to be possible well into later life, in direct response to consistent physical activity. Beyond the biological mechanisms, exercise also tends to improve sleep quality, reduce stress, and often increase social interaction, particularly if it involves a walking group, exercise class, or activity with others, meaning a single, consistent habit can positively influence almost every other factor we've discussed tonight. You don't need anything intense to benefit. Research has found meaningful cognitive benefits from moderate activities like brisk walking, swimming, dancing, or cycling, performed consistently several times a week. The emphasis should be on consistency and enjoyment rather than intensity. An activity you'll actually keep doing over months and years will provide far more benefit than an intense program you abandon after 2 weeks. Let's bring all of this together. Brain fog after 60 is rarely caused by one single factor, and it's rarely permanent or unchangeable. It tends to emerge from a combination of normal age-related processing changes combined with modifiable factors like hydration, stress, sleep quality, cardiovascular health, and physical activity. The research consistently points toward the same conclusion. The brain remains far more adaptable later in life than people often assume, and consistent, evidence-based habits can make a real, measurable difference. I also want to gently address something important: occasional forgetfulness, misplacing keys, blanking on a name, walking into a room and forgetting why, is a normal part of aging and not, on its own, something to be alarmed about. What's worth discussing with a doctor is a noticeable pattern of decline that's progressive, affects your ability to manage daily tasks, or is accompanied by other concerning symptoms. There's an important difference between normal age-related cognitive changes and something that warrants medical evaluation, and your doctor is the right person to help you understand which one you might be experiencing. So to recap everything we've discussed tonight, stay properly hydrated throughout the day, actively manage stress through practices like quiet reflection and maintaining social connections, prioritize cardiovascular health through both medical management and aerobic activity, build genuine sleep quality through consistent habits, and most importantly of all, make regular physical exercise a consistent part of your life. None of these require expensive supplements, dramatic interventions, or perfect execution. They require consistency, applied gradually over time. If this video was helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe. I share real, evidence-based content like this regularly, focused on practical ways to support healthy aging without exaggerated claims or fear-based marketing. Memory changes after 60 can feel unsettling, but understanding what's actually happening and knowing there are real, research-supported things you can do can make a meaningful difference, both in how your brain functions and in how much less you have to worry about it. Before you go, let me know in the comments, which of these 5 habits are you already doing consistently, and which one are you going to focus on starting this week? I read every comment, and your experiences genuinely help me decide what to cover in future videos. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.